We welcome you to the Bible study today. Turn in your Bibles to Job chapter 12. We'll be studying the book of Job, chapter 12, verse by verse today. Verses 1 through 3, Job replies. Job 12 through chapter 14, we see Job's reply to his friends. And verses 1 through 3, I have understanding. Verse 1. Then Job answered and said, so this is the beginning of Job's response in chapters 12 to 14, which marks the end of the first round of speeches. Each chapter division marks one of three major sections of his speech. And so this is one of the largest speeches of Job in the book of Job. Verse 2. No doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. Job responds with sarcasm. There's no doubt that you are the people of wisdom, and when you die, wisdom will die with you. And so, yes, it appears that Job is being sarcastic in his reply to his friends with the wisdom that they claim to possess. Verse 3, but I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Indeed, who does not know such things as these? Job is not an empty-headed man, as was said by Zophar back in chapter 12 and verse 12, and chapter 11, verse 12. He has understanding as well as his friends. He is wise, and he is not at all inferior to them. And so Job makes this point. Job speaks concerning their understanding, the things that they taught, even the things that they taught that were true, were things that were commonly known. They added nothing to the conversation. Job speaks concerning their understanding, their mind, their heart. Verses 4 through 6. Job points out how that he is mocked. Verse 4, he said, I am one mocked by his friends, who called on God, and he answered him. The just and blameless, who is ridiculed. Job says that he called on God, and that he answered him. God answered Job. In the past, he prayed, and God answered his prayers. He continues to be a just and blameless man. Yet now he is one who is mocked and ridiculed by his friends. To others, he's now a joke. He's we might say, a laughing stock. Verse 5. A lamp is despised in the thought of one who is at ease. It is made ready for those whose feet slip. As Job said in the previous passage, he is mocked and ridiculed. He gives the figure of a lamp. A lamp is used to light the path, a lamp providing light to see. A lamp serves to light the way so as not to slip, not to fall, stumble. He was like a lamp that was held up when he was bright, and now that he is dim, he's cast down. Job, like a lamp, is despised in the thought of one who is at ease, he said. The friends of Job were not suffering like Job. They were at ease. They were free from pain, discomfort. However, in this passage, we see more meant than simply being free from discomfort. Job's friends saw his suffering and proudly concluded that Job was suffering because of his iniquity as judgment from God. They were insolent and proud. The psalmist equated those at ease with the proud. In Psalm 123, 3-4, the psalmist said, "Have mercy on us, O Lord, have mercy on us, for we are exceedingly filled with contempt. Our soul is exceedingly filled with the scorn of those who are at ease, with the contempt of the proud." And so there he equates being at ease with being proud. Isaiah the prophet also spoke of being at ease, and particularly in Isaiah 32:11, not only proud, but being complacent. Of course, if one is proud, sometimes one can become complacent. Isaiah 32:11, "Tremble, you women who are at ease. Be troubled, you complacent ones. Strip yourself, make yourself bare, and gird yourself on, and gird sackcloth on your waists." And so here in verse 5, Job is describing them as being at ease, not understanding his suffering, and proudly making such an accusation against him of his supposed wickedness. Verse 6, "The tents of robbers prosper, and those who provoke God are secure in what God provides by his hand." So here in verse 6, Job counters the arguments of his friends that if he would seek God, he would prosper and be secure. He counters their argument by making observations concerning the prosperity and security of the wicked. First, he says that the tents of the robbers prosper. Second, those who provoke God are secure. And he concludes by saying that God provides by his hand even for the robbers and for those who provoke God. Job had called on God in the past, and God had answered him. He makes the point that he is just and blameless, Job 12:4. Yet now Job is mocked and ridiculed by his friends who see his suffering and conclude falsely that he must be wicked or practicing iniquity as demonstrated by his suffering. We might ask, who suffers? In this world, it is true that sometimes the wicked suffer, while the righteous prosper. However, this is not always the case. Sometimes the righteous suffer, while the wicked prosper. And so Job makes this point. His friends taught as though the righteous always prosper and the wicked always suffer, but it wasn't the case. Verses 7-12, he makes the point, learn from creation. Look around at what God has made. Verse 7, he says, "But now ask the beasts, and they will teach you, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you." Job appeals to the creation. It is as though each of the works of creation speak, if only his friends would listen. Everything is in God's hand. First, ask the beasts, and they will teach you. Second, ask the birds, and they will tell you. And so the beasts and the birds do not actually teach or speak, but their activity, their presence in this world reveals something of God if they would only pay attention. Verse 8, "Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you." That would be something to need the fish of the sea to explain something to them who claim to be wise. But there's something to learn from these things of creation, whether it's the earth itself beneath our feet, or it's the fish that reside in the sea. And so here in verse 8, he continues pointing to the creation. Third, speak to the earth, it will teach you. Fourth, speak to the fish of the sea, and they will explain to you. Verse 9. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? Here he makes the point. Job here speaks of God as the Lord. Job 12 and verse 9. We see that the hand of God in this creation and his providence. Job makes the point that the beasts, the birds, the earth, and the fish all know that the hand of God has done this. Verse 6. Remember what Job said after experiencing the disaster of the loss of his children. Everything that he had, including his life, he had by God. Job 1 and 21, the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Here we see the name of God. The last time the name Lord was included in the book of Job by the writer was when the writer said how Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head in Job 2:7. The next time the name Lord, capital L-O-R-D, is found is when the Lord speaks in Job 38 and verse 1. What does this mean? Well, we are not told, but it does seem significant. We'll let you to dwell and contemplate on that. Verse 10. In whose hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind? The life of every living thing is in the hand of the Lord. Even so, the breath of all mankind is in God's hand. Job includes himself. Verse 11. Does not the ear test words and the mouth taste its food? We learn that one must gather information by his senses. The ear, for example, hears the sound of words that are spoken, and the mouth tastes the flavor of food. The mouth or the palate tastes the food's flavor. And so we use our senses, whether it be the sense of taste or the sense of sound, to be able to learn more of the world around us. Verse 12. Wisdom is with aged men, and with length of days understanding. As we live, we gather information through our senses, with the opportunity to grow in wisdom and understanding. Man does not simply gain wisdom and understanding through aging or growing older. One learns not only from tradition passed down from previous generations, but we learn through observation. And so while his friends may have been wise, they needed to look around, use their senses, and such as their ears, and listen to the sound, see the creation, that the Lord has done this. In verses 13 to 25, we see the wisdom and the power of God. Verse 13, with him are wisdom and understanding. He has counsel and understanding. So there is wisdom and strength with God, he says. It is God who has counsel and understanding. Man's wisdom and strength is, however, nothing in comparison to that of God. The things of counsel and understanding belong to God. Verse 14. If he breaks a thing down, it cannot be rebuilt. If he imprisons a man, there can be no release. Man may build a great building or a great city, yet if God chooses to break it down or tear it down, it cannot be rebuilt. If God imprisons a man, the man will not be released. Verse 15. If he withholds the waters, they dry up. If he sends them out, they overwhelm the earth. So God may withhold the rain and the waters, they dry up. There's a drought. Or God may send the rain and overwhelm the earth, cause a flood. Of course, the greatest example of a flood is that of the flood, worldwide flood in Genesis chapter 7. There are frequently floods and droughts. Man witnesses the results, but of course, without revelation, does not know why. Verse 16. With him are strength and prudence. The deceived and deceiver are his. Earlier, Job said concerning God in verse 13, with him are wisdom and strength. He now repeats that with God there is strength and prudence. God uses both the deceived, the one who is misled, and God uses the deceiver, who misleads, in order to carry out his will. Back in Job 11:11, Zophar insinuated that Job was deceitful. Verse 17. He leads counselors away plundered and makes fools of the judges. And so the counselors of the earth are known for their understanding, providing counsel for men, such as kings. The judges of the earth, known for their wisdom, make judgments and rulings. However, neither the counselors or the judges of men can prevail against the wisdom of God. Job says that God leads the counselors away plundered. And the same thing is later said of the princes or priests in Job 12:19. The term here rendered plundered may also be translated stripped, as in the prophet Micah chapter 1 and verse 8. It's as though they are stripped of their understanding, naked in shame. Job says that God makes fools of the judges. Judges who the world considers to be wise become fools or foolish. This word plundered, or as we mentioned, literally stripped, the idea of them being stripped of their counsel, their wisdom, their prudence, and walking in shame, walking naked in shame. Verse 18. He loosens the bonds of kings and binds their waist with a belt. And so God loosens the bonds of kings. The term bonds may be translated chastening, like we see in Job 5 and 17. Chastening or disciplining. This might mean that either the bonds imposed by the king to restrain others, or the bonds which restrain the king himself. Which is it? Well, I think that he's more likely referring to how God releases the people from the bonds or the discipline of the king. Instead, it is as though God binds the waist of the king with a belt in order to be led away. This figuratively shows the power of God even over kings. Again, this whole lengthy stretch of passages describe the superiority of God, wisdom and power of God over that of man. Verse 19, God can do all these things. He leads princes away, plundered, and overthrows the mighty. God leads princes away plundered. Here in this passage, princes, 2 Samuel 8 and 18, chief ministers. For example, 2 Samuel 20 and 26, there was a man who was a chief minister under David, the king. However, this term is most frequently translated priest in the Bible, and so literally translated priests. And many versions use the word priest here instead of prince. Of course, both are true. The priests too were in the hand of God and could face these reversals. God prevails. The priests too were in the hands of God, and they could face these things too, just like those royal princes or rulers. Verse 20. He despises the trusted ones of wisdom and takes away the discernment of the elders. And so God deprives or takes away the trusted ones of their power of speech. This may refer to those who taught the traditions, who passed down the traditions from previous generations. The friends of Job trusted in these traditions. And so the trusted ones, or those who are trusted by people like Zophar and the other friends. He also takes away the discernment of the elders. And so they were known for their leadership and wisdom. For example, King Rehoboam consulted the elders for advice or counsel. However, he rejected their advice and instead consulted the young men who had grown up with him. So he went to his peers, at least those childhood men who had grown up with him, and he did so unwisely. The same term for elders may also be translated as aged, like in Job 32:9, or old, as in Job 42:17. So the term elder can refer to someone simply who is older, someone who's aged, or it may refer more technically to some position, such as those who served King Rehoboam, for instance, in 1 Kings 12. Verse 21. Of course, the older people were honored. In verse 21, he pours contempt on princes and disarms the mighty. And so, again, God does not respect the princes and mighty of the earth because of their power. He's not intimidated like men may be to these princes and the mighty of the earth. These are men of royalty and power. Compared to God, though, these rulers are insignificant. It says that he disarms the mighty. And so he deprives or takes away their power or their strength to fight or defend themselves. Again, in all these verses here, we see the power and wisdom of God, how he's superior to all these people of the earth. Verse 22. He uncovers deep things out of darkness and brings the shadow of death to light. And so God uncovers deep things. These are the mysteries that are hidden well beyond the ability of men to uncover from the darkness or to comprehend. God also brings to light even those things concealed by the darkest, the deepest of darkness. Of course, one of the greatest mysteries is that of death. The only thing we know of what lays beyond death is what God has revealed. The deep things may refer to the shadow of death. Sometimes the shadow of death, speaking of the darkness of death, as we've seen other places in the book of Job. Verse 23. He makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations and guides them. From great people to great nations. But they're great because of God. He makes nations great. He also destroys them too. He may use a nation to destroy another nation. Second, he enlarged nations beyond their borders. And while they may expand and grow, he may also guide or lead them back again. Verse 24. He takes away the understanding of the chiefs of the people of the earth and makes them wander in a pathless wilderness. And so he deprives the chiefs of the earth, the people of the earth, of understanding. He makes them wander in a pathless wilderness, place of confusion, no way out. Verse 25, last verse of this chapter. They grope in the darkness without light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. They grope, look for answers, look for something blindly, as in the darkness without the light. And perhaps you've been in a dark room, no light. You grope around, you feel for something, the doorknob on the door, or the nightstand in the bedroom, trying not to trip. Here we see that people groping for answers. God makes him stagger like a drunken man, just like a man who's intoxicated, reeling from side to side, wandering around. Job 12 and 24, same word is used, wander and stagger. To wander as though you have no aim, no purpose, no focus, no direction. Stagger, reeling from side to side. Job deals a great blow to the wisdom of his friends. His friends were proud and professed to know by wisdom and tradition that they have been taught from previous generations that those who suffer are wicked, and those who prosper are righteous, that the righteous prosper and the wicked suffer. Job makes it abundantly clear in the passage that that's not always the case in this world. Sometimes the righteous suffer while the wicked prosper. Yes, it's true that the righteous can prosper and the wicked suffer, but the same is true otherwise. And he exposes their error. He points out the hand of God. Now, Job didn't know. Job's wisdom and prudence and understanding were at least equal to that of the friends, perhaps greater. But there were questions he did not know. He was like a man groping in the dark without a light too. He didn't know. Why was he suffering? He believed himself innocent, blameless, a just man. But he didn't know why he was suffering. He believed that God had brought this upon him. But he didn't know. He didn't know about Satan, as we saw in the earlier chapters, nor did his friends. But in this chapter, he makes the point that just because one's suffering does not mean that the person is unrighteous or wicked. Well, that's all the time that we have, and that's the rest of the chapter. So encourage you to study on your own. And Lord willing, we'll be back again to continue with the next chapter of the book of Job. Thanks for being here today.